eQuez. Your quest for education starts here. Welcome to eQuez Audio.
Hello everybody, this is Margaret Feldman, founder of eQuez, a platform that helps students discover careers, find best fit schools, and make smart choices about higher education. This is episode 13 of Inside with eQuez, where we take an inside look at the journeys and lives of students and professionals who are studying to enter or work in a particular career. Today we are speaking with Steve Schnute, electrician and owner and operator of TriStar Electrical and Lighting in Southeast Michigan. After listening to this episode, if becoming an electrician sounds interesting to you, visit eQuez.com, that's EQUEZ.com, to schedule your personal career consultation. During your call, you will be able to talk to a professional in the field, learn about the state requirements, and understand the different training options that are available in your particular area. Steve started his career as an electrician in 1997, working as an apprentice for his dad. After 4 years as an apprentice, he earned his journeyman electrician's license. Now, along with his brother, Steve owns and operates an electrical contracting company in Southeast Michigan called TriStar Electrical and Lighting. 4 years ago, he started a website called AskTheElectricalGuy.com, where he offers tips and advice on getting started as an electrician. Steve teaches classes on electrical fundamentals, schematics, and troubleshooting to property maintenance technicians, HVAC techs, and those interested in these topics. Steve and his wife have 4 adult children. One of his sons works for him as an electrical apprentice. Now, let's hear from Steve Schnute. Well, Steve, welcome to the podcast. We are very excited to have you today.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Yeah, well,
it's an honor to be here.
Let's dive right in here. So you are an electrician. So I want to know, how did you first learn about this career path, and how did you get your start in this career?
I would say probably the first time I got my hands on some live wires that were hanging out of a wall and thought, nuts, someone screwed up.
Yeah.
I wonder whose job that was, right?
Right.
But that did actually happen. But that's probably not the first time I thought about it. I grew up in a house where my dad was doing a lot of this kind of work. He worked in the utility in Michigan for the utility company here. It's called Detroit Edison.
Okay.
But he was always doing jobs for people and side jobs. And that's probably the first exposure I really had to the trade. And when I got older, I began to help him and do some work with him. And I started to get interested in. And then I found myself, I was living in Pennsylvania at the time, and I was doing nothing like the trades or electrical, but I was put in charge of maintenance, building maintenance. And all of a sudden I had to deal with all kinds of different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was electrical, and I had to learn kind of on the fly how things work or why they don't work more appropriately. Found myself on the phone a lot with my dad, trying to get him to talk me through things. And it was during that time that I got interested in it, and I realized I like it,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't all that terrible at it.
Sure.
And I wanted to know more. So that was probably the beginning, the roots of what steered me in this direction. That was a lot of years ago.
Yeah. And what would you say kind of inspired you to focus on the electrical trade versus another type of trade?
Well, I'd have to say it was just the times with my dad.
Okay.
Working with him. I never really considered myself real mechanical or hands-on for most of my growing up years.
Okay.
So I didn't really consider, hey, why don't I be a carpenter or a plumber or something? It just never really was on my radar. I was just, this sort of just came along in its own way.
Sure.
And like I said, I found I had an aptitude for it for whatever reason. And so it was never a matter of, well, do I choose electrical or do I choose roofing. It wasn't like that. It was just,
Right.
it was kind of a natural progression where I found myself doing it more and more and liking it. And it came at a pretty good time when I was ready for a career change,
Okay.
and some stars and planets kind of lined up just right for us. My dad was retiring, and he wanted to start his own contracting company, and I was ready for something new, and it just worked out. So I became his apprentice. That was 1996.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so we started a little company, the two of us,
Oh, wow.
um,
Okay.
in 97, I'm sorry, early 97. Yeah.
Nice.
And then my brother joined us, and we've been all working together ever since.
Yeah, well, I want to dig into that a little bit more because that's
Sure.
a really interesting story. And I'm sure there's some interesting dynamics in a family business. So, can you tell us a little bit more? I want to know what it's like working in a family business, and then just in general, what it's like owning your own electrical contracting company.
Yeah. Depends on what day you ask me, actually.
Yeah.
As far as being with a family, in a family business, it has been really a blessing. We might be unique in that because other people say, "Oh, don't ever go into business with family and whatever." But
Right.
and I understand where that's coming from, and it does have its own set of issues and challenges sometimes. But we've always been a pretty close family anyway, so it's not really an issue where we've got a lot of personality conflicts or anything like that. Sometimes
Right.
there are different opinions and different ways of looking at things and going about things. But I would say that we tend to make up for each other's, lackings or gaps.
Yeah.
When I'm strong in some things, my brother's strong in other things. My dad is same thing. So we have each other's back. And what really helped me was because I am close with my dad. Uh, Unlike maybe other guys that get into the trades, I didn't have to try to impress anybody.
Okay.
I didn't feel like I had to prove myself really. I felt free to not know anything, right?
Okay.
So I could ask questions. I could learn at my own pace. There was no pressure. My dad is extremely patient, kind person. So none of that, first year getting, mistreated by the guy, all that stuff didn't happen for me.
Oh,
So
wow, that's
that was good. That was really good. So I was able to learn and kind of grow it at my own pace. So in our case, having a family business, has been great in that regard. Then there are the other side of it where, you can't leave it sometimes.
Right.
It follows you home. It's there at holidays. It's there at birthdays. You never really get away from it.
Right.
It's always kind of showing up.
Right.
So it can blur the lines, and you got to deal with boundaries and all of that. But so there's a whole gamut of things that come into play that you probably wouldn't deal with if it was just a conventional job where I show up and I go home and it's my life and all that.
Sure.
So yeah.
Got it. And I'm curious, do you think that, kind of jumping back to the career of an electrician in general, do you think that there are any misconceptions about the career and what it means to be an electrician out there? Or do you think people have a pretty good understanding of what it is that you do?
I think I can probably say for myself, it's pretty much what I expected.
Okay.
I think if there, maybe people think it's a real high-end sort of cerebral, almost white-collar job where we're walking around with pocket protectors and calculators. And well, okay, yeah, there's some of that. There's some math and all that, but it's also the trades.
Right.
I come home filthy and tired and beat up,
Right.
And muddy sometimes, and or full of cobwebs or bleeding, and it can be pretty physical, and tiring and physically demanding. And some guys aren't expecting that when they get into it. There's all kinds of different sorts of work that we do, and one day doesn't necessarily look like the next. So other than that, it's pretty much what you would expect.
Okay.
It's a lot of wire and power and lights and hooking things up and
Right.
all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And with your contracting company, TriStar Electric and Lighting, is there
Yeah.
a particular area of work that you focus on, or can you tell us a little bit more about what specific type of work that you do in that business?
Sure. We focus on residential and commercial.
Okay.
So on the residential side, and it depends on what the market's doing at the moment. For like when we first started, it was just new homes.
Okay.
Back in the early 2000s, everyone was building homes. Everywhere there was a piece of land, someone was throwing a house on it. So we were going from one house to the next,
Okay.
just roughing and finishing and roughing and finishing jobs. And then the housing market crashed,
Right.
and the commercial work kind of picked up more. But we've always done both.
Okay.
So a residential work might be remodel work in homes, new homes, panel upgrades. It could be just as small as I need a new circuit to my sunroom,
Right.
or I just bought a hot tub. Can you hook it up? Or
Mm-hmm.
in the last 5, 6 years, we've been doing a lot of generators. We've
Okay.
become a generator dealer and installer, so we do a lot of that. So that's residential types of troubleshooting. Almost every day, somebody needs something fixed.
Right.
So jobs range from a 10-minute visit to 2 weeks. We
Okay.
just roughed a house earlier this year, and it took a crew of guys two plus weeks just to get the place ready for drywall.
Okay.
And with commercial work, it's a lot of the same kinds of work, but it's different. There's conduits, and there's you're dealing with steel structures and bigger equipment and transformers, and we're being asked to quote larger office building type jobs for
Right.
it's the same process of rough and finish and getting it ready if it's like a ground up new construction kind of thing or a remodel, but it's just different, with steel studs instead of wood studs and different kinds of material, different processes of doing things. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, commercial and residential is our kind of our wheelhouse. So
Got it.
I think we're best at smaller jobs that don't go past 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not a big company. There's only about 5 of us
Okay.
that work in the field. So we try to stay within what we can do well.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And I
Yeah.
know you kind of alluded to this earlier about how every day could be different. Can
Yeah.
you kind of give us a glimpse into maybe what your different days might look like?
Oh yeah. Well, for me, because I'm one of the owners, my days are a little different than the field guys.
Sure.
So I could be doing anything from administrative to the actual work. Like if you took yesterday for an example, I had 2 or 3 appointments with clients where I was walking over jobs, taking notes. Then I got to get back to a computer, send them an estimate.
Yep.
And then I get a call, and this was just yesterday. Someone had a problem, and I drove to a house, and I had to run a new circuit for someone's water heater. So my days are sort of split up between the administrative side of it and running jobs.
Okay.
Often I'm the journeyman on the job, overseeing what's going on.
Okay.
So I could be in front of a computer 1 minute, crawling through an attic the next. It's
Okay.
just and everything in between, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
And as
Um,
far as travel that you do you do generally your work in one specific geographic area? Do you travel far and wide for a
mhm.
job, or what does your travel look like?
My travel, probably within an hour's drive,
Okay.
radius around us is it's about the extent of
Okay.
how far we'll go. Most of our work is right here where we are, Livingston County in Michigan,
Okay.
where we happen to be, and most of our work is centered around there. But it's not uncommon at all to drive 45 minutes one way, to
Sure.
take care of something. Sure.
Okay. Got it. And what would you say is your favorite and least favorite part of being an electrician?
As far as the actual trade, I probably get the most satisfaction. I like solving things.
Hmm.
I like puzzles, and it's really fun when I'm able to figure something out that no one else could,
Right.
or just to feel like I really helped a customer,
Hmm.
and those aren't necessarily big money jobs.
Right.
They're just somebody really needed something and couldn't figure it out, and sometimes I can't figure it out either, but more often than not, given time, I can work it out,
Right.
and I enjoy that. I
Hmm.
enjoy helping people. People are afraid of electricity. They think it's some kind of black magic voodoo thing, and they don't want anything to do with it, which is
Right.
fine. And so I enjoy it when I can help somebody. Sometimes the most sometimes the most annoying thing is trying to make money at this,
Hmm.
believe it or not. And it's maybe that's another misconception. People think that electrical work is just flush with money's just falling from the skies, because not necessarily. It's like anything else. It's hard. It can be really hard to be profitable,
Right.
and that's just part of the job. It's part of any business. Sometimes, when I just go to someone's house and fix something and say, no charge. I didn't need anything for that. That was easy.
Hmm.
That's fun. People are surprised, and they're blessed, and I like
Hmm.
that. Oh, it's always challenging dealing with people at
Yeah.
times. I'm sure you know that. You get all kinds.
Yeah.
And that goes for employees too.
Yep.
I don't necessarily like dealing with issues and all of that. So
Yep.
I don't think anyone does. But
Hmm.
that can be frustrating. You never know what you're gonna find when you knock on a door and it opens.
True.
To For the first time, and
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of an adventure even.
Yeah.
What am I gonna get today?
Right.
Or how big is their dog that's going to jump on me? No. so so it keeps you young.
Yeah. Keeps you on your toes,
My
I'm sure.
my dad is still working with us, and he just
Oh,
turned
wow.
80.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. So he
Uh
must
huh.
really love it.
He does. He
That's
really
great.
does. He's not, he can't do things like he used to. And we're trying to keep him off ladders, but
Right.
but it's
Right.
hard. He wants to do it, and he still loves it, and so we're not going to take it away from him until he's ready.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and everyone loves him. He's
Sure.
a real special guy. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I saw, Steve, in the bio that you sent that your son is now also an apprentice and
Oh
is in
yeah,
the business. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because now you have three generations working in
we
it.
do. We do. Yeah. So there's my dad, there's my brother and I, and then I have one son working for us, and my brother has two sons
Oh,
working
wow.
for
Okay.
us. So yeah, they're all apprentices still. They're still going through the process. They'll be licensed in due course, but
Sure.
yeah, that's fun too.
That's
That's
awesome.
great. Yeah.
And that actually leads to my next question. What advice do you have for students who are interested in entering the electrical trade?
Well, if you're willing, if you're ready to do what it takes, it's a great career.
Yep.
There's no question about it. It's a very good career. The trades have made a real big comeback, at least in Michigan,
Yep.
in terms of the perception of what
Hmm.
kind of people and what sort of life you can expect from a trade. I think it's enjoyed a boost in image boost. I would say, yeah, it's not easy. It's not going to be given to you. I would say you're going to
Right.
have to work for it, and you're going to have to do your part and be committed to it. But it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good
And
trade.
yeah, I certainly agree. And with the image boost that you mentioned, what do you think has driven the perception to start to change about the skilled trades?
Well, here in Michigan, the skilled trades, after 2008, a lot of people left the state, and then when things came back around 2016, all of a sudden there wasn't enough guys.
Hmm.
There wasn't enough people in the trades, and but guys like me, for the first time, really, we were needing to hire people, and we couldn't find anybody. Or if you
Okay.
could find somebody, you didn't want to find them, if they were
Hmm.
available. You know what I mean? And so all of a sudden, yeah, there was a need for skilled tradesmen, and they weren't there anymore.
Okay.
So now it's rebounding, I think. We couldn't find anybody. If you wanted to hire someone, you had to get a headhunter,
Hmm.
and pay him $10,000 to go out and steal a guy from, and we're like, well, I won't do that.
Right.
So yeah, so there's a lot of opportunities in not just the electrical trade. Building has definitely come back, and plenty of good career paths for people that want to do that. And
Sure.
the other side of it is, I think there was a lot of people with really expensive degrees, and it wasn't paying off for them,
Right.
from what I'm hearing.
Right.
So there's that side of it too. Getting a 4-year degree is a lot of money, and it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. But just just to do it,
Right.
because this mindset that you have to go to college, that's making less and less sense than
Right.
it used to. So it's a very legitimate path. It's not going into the trades isn't kind of like a consolation prize. Well,
Hmm.
I couldn't get into college, so I guess I'll do this. I think it's got more prestige than that. It's a good path. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
If that's your skill set is, yeah.
I so agree with you on that, Steve. And that's why with eQuez, we've added the electrical trade to our platform for that exact reason, because it is such a viable career path. And we'll get into sort of the apprenticeship process. But from a financial standpoint, it makes a ton of sense because you're literally getting paid while you train. So
Hmm.
it's a really good option. There's, the demand is there. So I fully agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Obviously, right now we've got COVID-19 going on, so there's a lot of uncertainty
Yeah.
across all industries right now, really. What would you say for the electrical industry? How have you been impacted? How are you looking at it? And I know nobody has a crystal ball, but how do you see this impacting students who might be interested in getting into the trade?
Well, long term, I don't really see it having a huge impact. Right now, I think just everything has just been pushed back
Right.
a couple, 2 months or three, maybe more, maybe a year.
Hmm.
I don't know. It just feels like we're on a pause.
Yep.
And before, I don't know how long this is going to go on, obviously,
Right.
but it's going to end, and then
Hmm.
we're gonna pick up pretty much where we left off, and it's going to go crazy. I was just telling someone the other day, one of my guys, that we had to lay off everybody except for myself and my brother, and our
I'm
office
so
manager.
sorry.
But that's what everyone's got to do, right? But they're all
Yeah.
there and they're ready to go.
Yep.
Um, so because everything stopped,
Right.
the phone stopped ringing, and people were afraid to have anybody in their homes. Understandable.
Right.
Plus, in Michigan, there was a executive order that construction had to stop anyway. So only
Right.
essential businesses, and you know all that.
Yep.
So we were deemed essential, but most of what we do isn't essential. So
Right.
it's kind of a catch-22. We can only do certain jobs. So between that and just where everybody in the economy was at, everything just kind of quit.
Right.
So anyway, our guys have been furloughed and they're waiting. But
Okay.
I was just I brought one of them back the other day for a small job. And I told them, don't get too comfortable at home. This is going to end, and I
Right.
think it's going to end abruptly.
Yep.
Um, it's going to go nuts again. In fact, our phones are already ringing, and
Okay.
people right now. I'm doing a lot of estimates, but you can just feel it. It's in the air. It's gonna kick in again,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be overwhelmed, and we're gonna be too busy. So it's good
Yeah.
we're doing this today, you and me.
Yep.
Um,
I
yeah.
know. I was very
So
excited when we had the opportunity to do this.
yeah, yeah.
Silver
So
lining.
I'm not too worried.
Okay, good.
I'm not too
That's a
worried.
good, hopeful message for people. What would you say, Steve, has been your most memorable or rewarding experience that you've had working as an electrician?
Memorable and rewarding. I would go back to, in general, solving problems for people
Okay.
and improving their lives is probably the biggest payoff for me. As far as specific jobs, there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
Like boy, do I have any stories? Um,
I love stories.
Most of my stories are screw ups. But
We can hear those too. Those could be
yeah,
fun.
yeah, we had some. Let me think about that. But
Next question for you, Steve, is how do you think the electrical trade is viewed within the entire construction and building industry
how is
versus,
it viewed?
yeah, versus other trades? How do you think the electrical trade is viewed? Like the perception of it?
Oh, well, I think that we're just a piece of the puzzle or a piece of the process.
Yep.
If you're talking about like a big construction job where there's lots of trades there,
Yep.
and we usually have to work with at least a couple
Hmm.
where we intersect at the same time. I think we're just viewed as another part of the process, and
Okay.
usually there's a lot of cooperation and respect one for another. I don't really ever have problems with other trades. Everybody understands that everyone has a job to do, and we try to make it as easy on one another as we can. You, but how are we viewed? There's always the silly little, oh, here comes the electrician, with your 3 summer homes and
Yeah.
like, okay, not really. I only have
Right.
2 summer homes, so no, I don't. But there's those stereotypes that we're overpaid, but that's just job site banter. Nobody
Yep.
really, I don't think, thinks that, but we're just all there to take care of a customer,
Get the
and
job
we
done.
work well together. I've had a lot of people come to me on job sites and ask if I'm hiring because they don't want to be what they are anymore.
Okay.
I'm tired of running gas pipe. I'm tired of this, or I hate my boss, or all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Yep.
And so it usually leads to conversations about, well, what do you think you'd be doing for me?
Right.
Because yesterday I spent 12 hours digging in the dirt. So how do you feel about that?
Right.
I crawl under houses and I come out covered with spider webs and
Hmm.
mud and whatever else is down there, So it's
Right.
not necessarily easy.
Right.
You still want to talk about that, or
Right.
but
Right.
oh, okay, and you're making pretty good money doing what you're doing,
Hmm.
buddy. I'm not going to pay you more.
Right.
You have no experience here, so
Hmm.
so those are interesting conversations.
Oh, for sure. For sure. For sure. And can you tell us a little bit more about? I know you said that you apprenticed with your father.
I did.
Tell us kind of what that was. Was it more of like an informal apprenticeship or was
Mm,
it somewhat formalized? What was your experience? And then I want to talk about how students today could get started.
right, because the process today is much different.
Right.
At least in Michigan, the procedures and laws have changed. When I started in 1997, all you had to do to be an apprentice is apply to the state, and they'd send you an apprentice card,
Hmm.
and then it's all on the job training, and you
Right.
work for 4 years and then take your test. It's not like that anymore. You have to be in a approved, accredited program, which involves schooling and book work.
Hmm.
So it was in that sense easier to become an electrician back then. You
Right.
could literally just try it out,
Right.
and see if you like it. Well, in today you have to make more of a commitment
Right.
if you want to go by the book. So for me, being an apprentice was literally, yeah, my dad and I just showed up on jobs and we started working.
Hmm.
I had already had, like I said, some exposure to the trade, so I wasn't completely clueless.
Right.
But I was a lot more clueless than I realized,
Right.
until I
Right.
started doing it every single day. So, but like I said, my experience was very positive and very affirming and nurturing. And I'm working with my dad, like I said,
Hmm.
and you couldn't ask too many questions. I never had to worry about looking stupid. I knew I was stupid. It's okay, but it was
Right.
fine. I
Right.
wasn't trying to impress anybody. So for me, that was a great environment to learn in.
Right. Right.
So
So let's say that I'm a student, I'm interested, but I don't have any experience, any really exposure to the trade, and my family doesn't either.
mm,
Do you think that it's still possible and doable for someone who maybe doesn't have a background or experience to still get started? And what sort of
Sure.
prior knowledge would you need to get started?
I hired a fella last fall. He had no experience either. He did come kind of sideways from another trade. He was in the, I think, mechanicals trade or HVAC. So it's not, he knew how to turn a wrench, but he didn't really have any knowledge at all about our field. So we put him in new construction residential, by the way, is really a great place to learn this trade, because there's lots of just labor busy work you can do. You can't really screw up, and it's a good place to start. So fortunately we had a big house to do, and he went in there, and so you're just drilling holes and pulling wire, but it's a great place to start, just getting the idea of what we do, how things work, and any mistakes you make can easily be fixed. So anyway, he didn't know anything, and he did fine. And, he was so the question is, if you have no experience, that's not really the issue. The issue is to ask yourself what your aptitudes are and what your strengths are. And so if you're a good problem solver, this might be a good trade for you. If you're good, if you're a quick study, if you can learn things, you got to be able to think a little abstractly. Problem with electricity is you can't see it.
Right.
So you have to be able to understand it. And most people know whether or not their brain kind of works that way. If you can't drive a nail without hitting your thumb, well, maybe it's not for you. I don't know. So most people should be able to look at themselves in the mirror and just do an honest assessment of what are you good at. And if you're pretty good with your hands and you're pretty good at thinking on your feet, then yeah, the trade might be a path for you. That's not all you need. You need some people skills. You need some work ethic.
Right.
Boy, you need work ethic and all of that.
That's good. Okay. Yeah. Now, my next question is unions. Did you ever think about joining a union, or probably not because you just hooked up, with your dad right away, or did you have any experience with union electricians?
Well, I've never been in a union as an electrician. My first job was a union job, but that was in 1983, and I was working at a grocery store. I didn't even know I was in the union. I was in 10th grade or something.
Yeah.
No, obviously we're just a small family business, and it never occurred to me that I needed protection or anything like that. So have I come into contact with the union? Yeah. And it's usually fine. Once in a while, someone kind of doesn't care for me because I'm, in their space, but that's very rare. I don't really have a strong opinion on that. If I think for a lot of guys, it makes sense to be in a union. It can be very good. You just have to decide what you want and what makes sense for you, and do your research. There's a lot of things that the union can help with, and there are some downsides to it as well. But they offer great training. If you want a secure job where your pay structure is all mapped out and all that stuff, it's a good path to go. Nothing wrong with it. But for us, that's just not who we are. So I guess the answer is no. Never considered. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. And let's talk a little bit around compensation. Obviously, you own your own business, so it's going to be different than an employee. But for someone getting into the trade, obviously, as an apprentice, you start off making a certain amount. Then you hit that journeyman's license, which provides a bump. Can you just provide a little bit of color on what a student, let's say in your specific area of Michigan, what they can expect compensation-wise getting into the trade?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on your experience. If you're completely green, you could probably figure on being hired in around $12-13, anywhere from that up to 15, maybe 16 for an apprentice.
Right.
And you're going to probably be stuck there for a little while until you get out of that, right? And so it's going to take you 4 years to get your license. Not you might find yourself getting a little bump here and there. It just depends on who you're working for and what the health and the situation is at a company and all that.
Right.
But a freshly minted journeyman should be able to clear at least $20 an hour, up to 30, depending on who you work for.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the more you go along, the more experience you get, the more your boss likes you. Well, if you're, depending on, if you're in, I'm not sure about the union. I think those things are all pretty well mapped out.
Right.
And so I'm not sure it's merit based as we would be. I'm not sure. Right. But you can make pretty good money, but you got to stick with it, and you got to, make it worth it to somebody.
Right.
So yeah, about $12 to $15 to start out with. And then that's not including any kind of benefits, perks that might come along with the job. So, and that's going to depend on the company you work for. Mm-hmm. So all that has to be factored into, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I still think that, getting paid during your training is awesome. That's still a great thing for students.
And a lot of companies will pay for your training.
Right.
Or at least some of it, or work out some kind of a payback thing. If you complete your apprenticeship successfully, we'll start reimbursing you for every year you work for me, whatever they set up. Right. They'll end up paying for your schooling. So that's all income.
I think, and I think there's a compounding factor to that too, versus if you look at a student that goes to a more traditional college, they're not making any money, going to classes. Obviously they can get a part-time job, and they're paying for their own classes unless they've got a scholarship or something.
Through the nose, they're paying for their own classes. Yes.
Yeah.
I've got a daughter in college. I know.
You know how it goes. So then you come out and then you've got all this debt, versus an apprenticeship is just, you're making money, maybe not a ton in the beginning, but if you're making money, you're getting help with your training getting paid for, and then you'll get that bump with a job, and you've already got all this experience. It's a really good option. Not that it's for everybody.
Sure.
But for some students, I think, it is a tremendous opportunity for them.
Mm-hmm. And you say experience, the better you get at this trade, the more in demand you are.
Yep.
And you have skills that become more and more rare. The better you get at it, the more things that you learn to do, you find yourself in demand. You find yourself very valuable. Mm-hmm. And there's fewer and fewer people that I'm in people's homes at times. I'm amazed at what they don't know about their own. Like, well, I thought everybody knew this,
Right.
And they look at me like I'm some kind of a genius.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
right.
Not really. You can think that, I guess.
Yeah. So it sounds like you can really create your own destiny if you get in this, you get experience, you get really good at it, you love it. It sounds like sort of the sky's the limit, because the work is out there and the demand is there.
There is so much. There's so many different kinds of things that require an electrician. Mm-hmm. I don't know how true that is in the other trades. I'm sure it is. I'm sure this is true in the other trades too. But it's not just one thing you do.
Right.
Hopefully you get experience in a lot of different things. And the more you can do, you become gold. Mm-hmm. Like troubleshooting. That's a whole discipline in and of itself, and a science, and not everyone can do it.
Right.
And if you're good at that, and if you can get good at that, boy, just keep doing it.
Yep.
And any opportunity you have to learn something new, do it.
Yep.
Always.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm still going to ask it. Do you think that the investment of your time learning this trade and becoming an electrician, do you think that has been worth it for you?
Oh, yeah. If my business collapsed and I had to go become an accountant, I would still have the experience and the knowledge I have, and is always going to be in demand, and it's always going to be useful. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's too useful. I can't get away from it.
Yeah.
Right. So as far as the investment, it was just time and effort. I didn't have to pay anything.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't cost me a dime really, except some tools
Mm-hmm.
to learn this. Hasn't been easy and it hasn't always been fun, right? But it's
Right.
like anything. There's a cost. I shouldn't make it sound too easy. There's definitely a cost. But yeah, it was definitely worth it. I've been blessed. It's been 20 plus years now that I've been doing this, and if it ended tomorrow, I wouldn't regret it. It's been great. Yeah.
Great. Great. And I'm going to kind of flip that now.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on this before, but are there any scenarios where you think maybe students shouldn't get into the trade, or you see maybe people getting into it for the wrong reasons when they, really shouldn't be?
My exposure to people is maybe a little limited. We're a small company, and so I don't come into contact with tons of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Are there people that shouldn't do it? I think so. I think that has more to do with character
Mm-hmm.
than anything. But if this is true of somebody, then I don't know what you can do. But for example, if you're not willing to work, if you don't want to work, if you're looking for a job where you can put your feet up and sort of hide, don't come to me, I guess. You can't hide in my company. We're too small.
Right.
So if you're really not good with abstract thinking, troubleshooting, problem solving, certainly I think we touched on this earlier, if you just don't have really good mechanical skills like hand-eye, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
In my company, you have to be a little flexible as
Mm-hmm.
far as your working hours. We don't necessarily start super early, but we don't get done early either. You start tearing apart someone's house service, you can't say, well, it's time to go. I'll see you tomorrow.
Right.
You're there until you're done, or at least until you can leave it overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always 9 to 5. It's not always predictable. I had to go out just the other night at I didn't get home till 10:30. I had to go out and cover a kind of a service call, kind of an emergency thing.
Yep.
That wasn't really an emergency, but they felt it was.
Right.
So I had to drive about 50 minutes one way and
Mm-hmm.
basically reset someone's breaker. But it was important to them. So there's that kind of aspect to it where it's not always predictable. And sometimes you get over your head. You have to be willing to deal with unknowns.
Right.
Difficult situations, difficult people. There's lots of things to navigate. So if you're looking for predictable and easy, or I guess predictable, maybe not.
Got it.
Maybe try something else. Yeah.
Got it. That's good to know. Now, I know to some people, there's a perception that electricity is dangerous. I know sometimes parents are a little bit leery, especially if they themselves don't have experience. I've seen that sometimes. What would you say to either students or parents who are worried about sort of the danger factor of working as an electrician?
I'd say getting to the job is more dangerous, statistically, than the job itself. I have more close calls on freeways. Well, we haven't lost anyone yet.
Well, that's good.
Probably all of my notable injuries to myself have been sharp objects and scars from getting cut rather than being shocked.
Okay.
So you do need to be careful. There's plenty of opportunities to get hurt. So maybe that's another one. If you're a klutz, maybe this isn't
right.
This isn't for you.
Right.
And there are definitely safety factors and issues, and there's training for that. And we do need to be careful. Electricity can be dangerous for sure, but there's some pretty clear, obvious procedures to follow that should keep you safe. So I don't really I don't feel like I'm in danger, like I'm going off to battle or something every day. Some people, they have that perception that this electricity will jump out and kill you. And I suppose, that does happen, but not very often. And so if you're willing and able to follow instructions and do things right, there shouldn't be any problem with that.
Got it. Got it.
I got more scars on my head just from hitting nails in attics.
Yeah.
Than
yeah.
So yeah.
Got it. And I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I want to expand on it. What qualities do you see in apprentices or employees that you hire that you think contribute most to them being successful in the trade?
Yeah. Like I said, work ethic is everything, or it's huge. And I've seen both sides of that. And you can tell right away, pretty quick, what someone is ready and willing to do. And that's just all the stuff you learned from your dad, hopefully, about showing up on time, being willing to do whatever. But also, the guys that really that really succeed are good learners. They are willing to learn, and they're teachable. That's big, because you have a lot to learn, and that never ends.
Right.
I'm still learning. There's still things to learn. So you need to be able to be taught. You need to be able to be corrected. And when somebody approaches you and says, do it this way, you need to be willing to learn from anybody, not just your bosses. You need to learn from people that you consider less knowledgeable than you, because they might know something you don't. I learn from homeowners all the time. It's very important to listen. Be a good listener.
Okay.
Be a humble person that doesn't feel like you have to be a whatever, like a big shot.
Right.
So be teachable, and be willing to work hard. And I would say do hard things.
Okay.
Don't say, well, that's not my job. Do difficult things. Don't be afraid of being afraid or getting over your head, because you will be. I remember the first time I had to do a lot of different things that I was very uncomfortable. I remember having to hang a microwave for the first time. The ones that go over your stove, those guys. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but the first time you do it in a new house, you're drilling holes in people's brand new cabinets. It's a little daunting.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anything to do with it.
Right.
And I was there all by myself, and I remember being on the phone with my dad and saying, I don't like this. And he's just like, you can do this. Just So lots of those days, where you stand in front of something and I'm supposed to know what I'm doing, and I don't. And I have to look like I know what I'm doing to the customer, because you don't want to scare them. But I'm looking at something I don't understand, and I got to work it out. And that moment where you're not sure if I can do this, right? And this is too big for me. And so don't be afraid of being afraid. You're going to learn. You're going to have to go through things, and you're going to have to learn some things. And don't be the guy that just wants to do one thing, because if you do, that's all you'll be good at. Right. And like I said, you want to build a big base of knowledge and experience, because the larger that is and the deeper you are, the more valuable you are. And you want to make yourself someone your boss can't do without. Right. So what I would say to a new guy, that's your goal.
Got it.
Be indispensable.
Yeah, lots of good thoughts there to think about as you start and continue in this career. When you look back on your career, Steve, is there anything that you would go back and do differently?
Oh, as an owner of a business, for sure, I would have made some decisions differently that would have affected us differently. Just all of that, but any business owner can give you a list of all their mistakes. Right. We went through some difficulties for sure, like in 2008 and all of that. And we did some things we shouldn't have done, or we failed to do some things we should have done. And I don't have a specific that comes to mind that would be interesting, but as an electrician, anything I would do differently? Not really. Okay. Yeah, I don't think so. I've worked really hard, and I've never really said no.
Mm-hmm.
We should ask my wife this question. Maybe she would have a different answer.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think, maybe I could have worked a few less Saturdays. I don't know.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Got it. And have there been any other opportunities that you've had, Steve, from your knowledge of the electrical trade? I know that you have the Ask the Electrical Guy blog.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about that and or other things that have come your way because of your knowledge of the industry?
Couple things. Yeah, the Ask the Electrical Guy is a website that my wife and I have put together. She works on it probably more than I do, and that is mostly a resource for anyone that wants to get into the electrical trade. And there's pages on there about pay scales and apprentice programs and the different ways to get started.
Yep.
So that's what that's about. I've also started doing some teaching. Okay. That kind of came to me. That is separate from my business. And a couple years ago, I was approached by a friend who does training for a large HVAC provider that does a lot of training for techs and maintenance people and building managers and things like that. And they have a whole big, huge catalog of things, most of which is beyond me, but they do have some electrical classes. I've started to do some of those for them. So that keeps me busy. It keeps me on my toes and forces me to make sure I know what I'm talking about, which sometimes I do.
Yeah.
So those are fun. Those are like 8-hour days of teaching. And so I've done that for a couple years, not a ton, just a few days a year.
Sure.
But that's starting to grow. So that's kind of presented itself to me. So there's that too.
Nice.
And like I said before, you're always in demand. Someone always needs something when you're an electrician. So I need to be able to run out and just take care of friends, and take care of their little issues. And I'm happy to do that when I can. And so that's always there too. Yep.
Great.
And this is my first interview, I think. So maybe I'll do more of these. I don't know.
Yeah. Exciting. So last question that I have for you, Steve, and then after this, we can talk about anything else that you think we should. Mm-hmm. I like to ask this question of every guest on our show. If you could go back to, let's say, your first day as the apprentice on the job, what is the one piece of advice that you would tell yourself now, knowing all that you know now?
I think I already said it, but I'll say it again. Don't be afraid.
Okay.
And don't hesitate to take what's there and do hard things. Don't hide. Don't shy away from difficulties. Just plow into it, and don't be afraid of making mistakes, because you're going to make them.
Right.
When I have a new apprentice, one of my rules is you're not allowed to apologize for 2 weeks.
Okay.
I don't want to hear it, because you're supposed to make mistakes.
Yep.
Make them. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Just don't make them twice. But no, you can make them twice, but no apologies. You're supposed to learn. I expect that from you. So yeah, that's probably what I would tell myself. Just be at peace. It's okay. You don't have to prove anything. Just learn. Yep. Learn.
Great. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. Anything else, Steve, that you think would be pertinent for students to know, or anything else that you want to touch on?
Boy, we covered a lot.
I know. We did.
Yeah. Be good with people. That's probably the most difficult part of anything, is the people. So learn how to be patient, learn how to shut up. Maybe that's what I should tell myself back then. Just shut up.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, learning to work with people, because you're going to work with all kinds, and you're going to serve a lot of different people. If you got a huge ego, put a pin in it. Because if you don't, God will. So be a humble person, be teachable, and learn a lot, and you'll be fine. Try to enjoy it too.
Yeah.
Try to enjoy your work. Sometimes guys are a little too stressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just learn to take pleasure in what you do. Sometimes you just got to stand back and look at what you just did and say, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I nailed that one. I like that. That looks really good, go the extra mile and do more than what you were asked to do. Do it as if you're trying to please yourself or your mother.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So, so you'll develop a lot of self-respect that way, and people will respect you.
Yep.
And that's hard to get. We work really hard to keep our ratings up on Google,
Right.
and that means a lot to us. So that's something that's new, is the whole social media thing, and
Yeah.
having to maintain that. And people can really hurt you if they want to out there. So I don't have all the answers for that, but
Right.
that can be difficult too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's par for the
What
course
else?
nowadays. So,
Yeah.
well, great. Well, Steve, thank you so much. You've shared so much knowledge and information with us
Oh,
in
good.
a short amount of time here. So this has been great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's been an honor and a pleasure. It's nice meeting you, and thanks
Yeah,
for asking. Yeah. Good luck with
absolutely.
everything. We'll keep an eye on you,
Thank
and
you.
let's go well. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to eQuez Audio. To learn more about becoming an electrician, head over to eQuez.com. That's EQUEZ.com to schedule your personal career consultation. During your call, you will be able to talk to a professional in the field, learn about the state requirements, and understand the different training options available in your particular area. If you enjoyed listening, be sure to subscribe, and we would love it for you to rate and review us. Keep in mind that our discussion today mentions views and opinions that are personal in nature and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any school, agency, organization, employer, or company, and should be used at your own discretion. We wish you the best in your quest for education.